we actually switched to reasoning models that take some time to think.
I think we're going to see like a lot more flexible public transportation. So essentially just a fleet of driverless cars.
I'm also just curious, you work with different stakeholders within the organizations. How do they actually feel about integrating AI into their companies?
I think what becomes more and more the bottleneck now is what I would call adoption inertia.
I think one of the biggest sort of skills or abilities of the future is going to be just like people being open to change and being open to changing their
Right.
workflows and their routines.
If you are a leader or an entrepreneur, really do some scenario planning. Think about like in a few years from now, when AI is even more powerful than it is now, and it actually changes the way industries work.
Welcome to another episode of HauseTalk, where we explore the intersection of technology, innovation, and business strategy. I'm your host, Yeeling, and this is my co-founder, Anders. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Felix, an expert in AI strategy with extensive cross-industry experience, most recently focusing on mobility and automotive projects. Felix and I have worked together in the past, and I'm excited to dive into his insights on how businesses can leverage AI effectively. Felix, welcome to the show.
Yeah, so we are really excited about having you here. But Felix, first of all, could you do like a brief introduction to yourself and talk about your background and your work in consulting and so on?
Well, thanks for having me on. My consulting journey started, I think, 10 years ago. And I worked in projects in Europe, in Asia, Singapore, Korea, also in Hong Kong as well. And in different industries, actually, financial industry in Hong Kong. In Singapore, I've worked with Yeeling on a project for telecom, where we did more traditional business transformation, digital transformation. And then most recently, a couple of years ago, when Gen AI took off, we also helped companies, or we started helping companies how to apply that new technology to their businesses and solve business problems using Gen AI.
And recently, you've also been focusing on AI strategy and sort of the business application within AI. So, and also in particular within the automotive sector. Could you shed some light on that and your experience in that field?
Right. I think I can talk a bit about this later as well. Like there's different angles you can take on how to apply AI in a business context. But on the one hand, for example, is definitely internal process optimization. And so this is something that we did a lot for energy companies as well as automotive suppliers and automotive companies, is that they have a lot of internal struggles of how to optimize their processes internally. For example, for an energy company, actually quite simple case, but that's actually quite a good starting point for Gen AI, because Gen AI may or may not still hallucinate in some cases.
Yeah.
So if you apply it to a non-business critical process like visitor registration, it's not a bad thing if it fails once in a while.
Yeah.
So what we did is we helped them to actually fill in forms, help them to surface the right information so they can quickly register visitors, and that way solve one of their issues, like save them time and money in the end as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I guess that's I think we'll talk about that later as well, like the current sort of limitations of AI and
Right.
like what we can do now, and sort of I guess it's a gradual process. Like more and more critical applications can also utilize the AI as the models get more and more advanced.
All right, thanks for the overview. Maybe let's dive a little deeper into the state of AI. Let's talk a little bit about the big picture. So Felix, from your perspective, what are the most significant advances in AI over the past year that you feel business leaders or people in your line of work should be paying attention to?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. So generally, right, when we look at the past year, in the past few years, when Gen AI kind of started evolving, the models that we used were instantly outputting the reply, and I would call it instant or direct inference. And we actually switched to the so-called reasoning models that take some time to think and actually go through this thought process internally before outputting the reply. And so I think that first of all has also applications in business because it reduces hallucinations quite substantially. But also it actually as AI is more and more advancing, we can see more and more similarities with how humans think and human psychology as well. And so, for example, you might know this very popular book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, where you have these system 1 and system 2 thinking. And I think maybe we can play a short clip where we can explain what Daniel Kahneman is talking about.
Last year, and a great manual for how to make better decisions. Professor Kahneman is also a partner in the consulting firm The Greater Good. Professor Kahneman, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Your book makes use of a very useful analogy. In fact, the analogy is built into the title, Thinking Fast and Slow. System 1 is thinking fast. System 2 is thinking slow. What's the difference between the two systems, and why is it important for business decision makers to understand the difference?
Well, system 1 is essentially what comes up automatically on memory. So when I say 2 plus 2, something comes into your head. When I say your mother, an emotion comes. So all the things that are automatic, that's what I call system 1. And you have no control of it because it's automatic and involuntary. System 2, slow thinking, is distinguished really not so much by the fact that it's slow, it's pretty slow, but by the fact that it's effortful and deliberate. So what you can do deliberately, you do in system 2. And you can control yourself, control your thoughts, perform complicated computations, those things are activities in system 2. So system 1, most of the mental work happens automatically. We don't have to worry where to put our next foot or what word should come next. Some of the work, and it's important work, is done by system 2 when we slow down.
Do decision makers sometimes think they're in system 2 when they're actually in system 1?
I think most of us feel that we have.
Yeah, right. And so as you can see, also humans, they have some intuitive instant response, but we also sometimes have a very slow but thoughtful process and reasoning process. And so I think for AI, it's getting a little bit similar, and this also has implications for business, of course, because hallucination is a big factor that is a problem for business applications. And I think it's getting much better at reducing hallucinations and having more useful output that they can be used for all kinds of tasks in business.
And I actually think this is really starting to solve these questions. Like, of course, the base models can still hallucinate, but with deep research, for instance, they'll simply go and back everything up with sources. They'll spend like up to half an hour just researching, crawling the internet, right, and sources to back up every claim. So I think this is really like interesting that you're actually starting to be able to, in sort of a smaller scale, starting to be able to trust the AI. Of course, not with critical applications yet, but it's sort of starting to show where the future might be headed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think about a year ago, I was asked to do research and to just automate it by an AI because there was not much time, there was not much budget in the project, and I said it's not really possible. But now I think we're starting to see that it becomes actually possible.
Okay, so along with all these advances, what do you see as the major bottlenecks or challenges in AI implementation right now?
Right. So as the models are getting better and better, I mean, we just discussed this. I think a lot of the tasks can be automated or can be accomplished by AI already. However, I think what becomes more and more the bottleneck now is what I would call adoption or inertia. So decisions are typically not made super rationally, and also out of personal interest. There's politics involved and so on. And so organizational resistance to integration and integration with the existing workflows is really a big issue and a topic that I see daily in my work. And another example I think that I want to highlight is the what I would call better tool fallacy. So there is this quite famous meme that shows this is applied to texting apps, messaging apps. But basically the situation is there are 14 competing apps, right? And then someone goes and says, like, this is ridiculous. We need to build one app that works with all these different apps and has like a complete feature set. And then the next step is now there's 15 competing apps. So I think this is a really, really big problem as well, that if you look at this only from the tools perspective, you build more and more and more tools. And then it's also about who's going to use all these tools and who's going to integrate all that output. So what I think is important is to first integrate it with the organization and the humans working in this organization and their workflows, but then also to the existing tools and infrastructure so that it works together. And I think that's one of the big challenges for the industry right now.
Do you think agents might be a solution to this, so that instead of humans having to use these tools, it's actually just an agent to deploy that doesn't really care that, okay, if I need to send a message from this vendor to that other company, they might use different messaging systems, but it doesn't matter. I'll just like first ask this company and then use whatever platform the other company used to sort of bridge the information.
Yeah.
Do you think that might be the solution, that we actually don't care that there are so many tools, but it's because it's actually agents using the tools rather than humans?
Right. I think the issue is that in the past you would have to have someone develop an API or interface so that all these tools can communicate and work together. But now AI can play that role, at least in some cases, and be that interface and be that API and translate, for example, unstructured data into structured data, or one format into another, and help with that closing that gap, right?
So you mentioned about adoption inertia. So I'm assuming a lot of businesses and people are getting caught up in the hype around AI. So as a consultant, how do you actually sort of help clients distinguish between how far they should take their AI capabilities, or how ready they are? How will you guys make that decision for them, and even convince clients around that?
Right. I think there is some framework kind of that I can explain to you that maybe helps illustrate that a little bit. So on the one hand, I think what we have to consider is the degree of automation. So do you want to go completely AI first? Like you want to basically automate completely with agents, or do you just want the AI to support one little task or one little function? You can think of the analogy of the 5 levels of autonomous driving, right? In the first level, you basically just give a few little decisions to the car, and then you keep ramping up the control of the car, and then in the level 5, the car is actually completely driving unsupervised, right? And I think one of the big challenges is this in-between state. You can also see this with cars. If you can give potentially the car already, theoretically, you can give the car already all the control over the car, but there might be edge cases where the car makes the wrong decision. And so in that case, you always have to monitor it. You always have to be ready to take over. And I think this is a tricky part, which needs very careful design of the solution. And so I think what's important here is designing for the human in the loop, right? Having considering that the human needs to be still in the loop, and then making sure that this is some seamless collaboration between the AI and the human.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, how close do you think we are to autonomous driving? Just your own take on it. What is what is the current state? And
yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually following this topic quite closely. I'm super excited that actually now I think it's ready to take the next step. In the last few years, we saw the likes of Waymo, and I think in China we also have Didi testing similar services. But it was always quite constrained geographically. You would have to pre-map all the streets and
like the lidar map.
right, exactly the area that the car would drive in. And so I think it was quite limited, and it was actually really hard to scale. So the lidar, as you mentioned, is extremely expensive. So one of those cars would be over $100,000 easily, and so that really limits the possibility of scaling the service. But now I think we see a couple companies working on vision only autonomous driving, and of course Tesla is leading that field, and there's also some companies I think in China that are also making some progress. And so this approach I think is much more scalable. First of all, you already have the cars on the road. They have the cameras built in. It's pretty cheap compared to lidar, and you can gather all that data, right? You can have all the cars gathering data. And then with this vision only approach, it's actually pretty generalizable. So since it's not pre-mapped, you could basically drop in this car anywhere in the world and it could drive. There might be some local differences, right? Like you drive on the left side and the right side. You might have some different signage on the side of the road. So you would have to update that. You would have to teach the car that.
Yeah.
But besides that, I think it can drive pretty much anywhere.
At least the feedback I see from people using a Tesla FSD in America is that they pretty much have no interventions at this point. Like they can drive like hundreds of kilometers without any intervention.
Yeah.
So it's pretty. I mean, they of course still need to have focus because there could be these edge cases that as you mentioned before. But it's pretty impressive how stable it's actually getting at this point.
Yeah. And they've just released the Tesla FSD in China.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, it works pretty well. Maybe not as well as in the US, but now they are ready to basically close those edge cases, right?
I'm also curious, how do you guys see AI transforming public transportation and mobility services beyond personal vehicles? Because you guys were talking about Tesla and different Chinese car makers. So how do you see this being integrated into public transportation?
I mean, my take is that, I mean, obviously we already have like self-driving metro, like underground, like in Singapore and in Copenhagen too, and around the world. I think there are a lot of self-driving subway systems, but I think we're going to see like a lot more flexible public transportation. So essentially just a fleet of driverless cars, because when there's no driver, the cost is going to go down over time. Like people can own their own self-driving taxis. They don't need to drive it. They don't really need to have anything to do with it except just deploying it into the city, and it can pick up people and so on. So I think it's just going to be a lot of self-driving vehicles driving around. Of course, Tesla also announced the bigger bus, like the self-driving bus, that could probably be even cheaper for people that need to go to similar destinations. So there'll probably be like different products along different sort of cost ranges.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think what you mentioned is completely right. Like you have the bus, you will have some small cars that give you some personal space. And so I think in general there will be just many more options for people to get around. For example, Tesla announced the Cybercab, right? So that's pretty small and affordable option. It will be cheaper than Uber today. But then if you look at Uber, for example, they also have different options that you can choose. They have Uber Black, for example, which is more the premium segment. And so I can also imagine that other car companies that are more in the premium segment might license Tesla or other autonomous driving software. And then they could also offer those cars on the network. So you might have a more premium experience with a nice car, with a great end-to-end experience in general, maybe some concierge services on top or something like that. So you can imagine a lot of things across a whole range of like price points and different options. Yeah.
Okay. Very exciting. So I'm also curious to understand, Felix, you're from Germany, and as we all know, Germany has a very huge automobile car industry. So what's your take? What's the status of the car industry in Germany, and where do you see it going?
I think this is a very complex question, actually, and I don't know if I can give you a satisfying answer, but one thing is definitely that at the moment, the German car industry is struggling to produce cars at the same price as for example, Chinese EVs or also Tesla. And one of the reasons is that the manufacturing cost is much higher. So, for example, a VW EV, I think takes up to over 30 hours within the manufacturing line, whereas Teslas take around 10 hours. So that's like a 3x cost increase for the manufacturing, basically.
Is that even also for the Tesla factory in Germany? Like it's still more efficient than
Yes,
even with the increased cost of energy and so on, that they also
I think so. I don't know exactly about the number, but in general, the time to for production is much shorter.
Yeah.
So the processes and just the whole design of the car, the design for manufacturing is much more efficient. And so I think this is one of the big issues right now. And one way that I see this going is I think there will be a lot of consolidation in the future. Actually, you can already see this with German car suppliers that are merging, and also in the car space. You see in Japan, for example, they have similar issues. You see that Nissan and Honda, I think they wanted to merge, which now didn't go through. But we will see much more of this in the future. And then I think for the German industry, I believe they have to focus much more on the premium segment and really play on their brand reputation and brand strength. Exactly. So for example, you have some of the premium brands, they are very iconic, and so if they can actually keep that momentum and build on that, I think that could be one of the ingredients for sustained success.
Okay. All right. That was very interesting. Thanks for sharing. I would love to hear more about that. And maybe we can even have like a whole episode just on automobile and the industry on its own.
Sure.
But I think I'd like to bring the conversation back to AI in business. So Felix, previously you mentioned you have a framework in terms of managing clients. Perhaps would you like to elaborate more in terms of business? How are you approaching that when you work with clients?
Right. So I think I mentioned already the degree of automation, which plays a role, like whether companies want to completely automate something or they want to just automate a few parts. And so the design for human in the loop is super important. But beyond that, there's another dimension, I think, that is important, which is looking at either customer-facing solutions, so something that actually touches the customer, or more internal operational application of AI. So when we think of AI, we typically think of chatbots, I think, right? Like ChatGPT, for example, or in customer service, automating the way human interaction. So you don't talk to a human anymore, but now you talk to AI. And some customers might like it, some might not. But some of the more valuable use cases can also be actually AI that support the internal processes to enable people, to enable employees within the organization to be more efficient or to help customers better. So, for example, one big topic is sales enablement. So helping salespeople, for example, to surface information that they can share with their customers. And also one big topic is automating requests for proposal or tenderings, right?
Yeah.
But for example, what I've seen with multiple companies, multiple clients now is that they have they get these very large tenders with hundreds of requests and requirements, and so what takes a lot of time for the internal sales people is to actually match those requirements to all the different products that the company has. And so if you could actually use AI to just match these or pre-match these, at least, that would save them a bunch of time. And so this is something that a lot of companies are looking into solving internally and making a lot of use of AI internally. Yeah.
I feel like one big problem is always like the possibilities AI provide, like which issues to solve first, right? Like how to prioritize what to actually solve with AI, because I feel like there's so many aspects of a business that could be sort of revamped with AI, right? But it's this whole prioritization process and also figuring out like what could be, like what are the most viable use cases for AI.
Yeah. I think this goes back to what Yeeling and I do in our consult, or did together us in our consulting project, is looking at viability, desirability, feasibility. So what's actually possible? Like, do you have the data to actually solve this problem? Or do you need to, I don't know, create a new data platform, or you need to gather data, you don't have the data. And then viability, right? Like what business impact would it actually make? Like typically, how much does this process cost? Like, is there one person working on this process 1 hour a month? Then it's probably not really valuable to automate at this point. But if it's something that employees do daily, and ideally multiple employees, then you can save so much when you automate this. And then, of course, also desirability. Like, is this actually something that is of value for the customer as well? And I think in for example, the case of the tender, it really is also valuable for the customer, because you can speed up this tendering process. Like right now, they might need to wait like 10 days or a month for their reply, or like
longer.
Right. Right. And then we know how it goes with all the different processes and bureaucracy. It's very limiting. So if you can speed all these processes up, then I think it would be very helpful. Yeah.
I think it's very obvious the advantage that AI brings into internal processes. I'm also just curious. You work with different stakeholders within the organizations. In your experience, how do these maybe individual stakeholders, or even as a company, how do they actually feel about integrating AI into their companies? Because like when we talk about internal processes, improving internal processes, I imagine there's a lot of data, a lot of information about their companies having to go into these systems to train the models, right? So when you work with these stakeholders, like what are some challenges you face in terms of the adoption, the openness?
Right. I think in general, of course, there's the fear of being replaced. And while it's not maybe granted yet, I think there is some actual truth to this, that some of the work can be replaced. And so that doesn't mean that you cannot find other tasks, other things to do. But I think that's something that you need to manage, definitely. And there needs to be a very strong change management aspect to this as well. So the other aspect is maybe that people are hesitant to change their way of working in general. So they have maybe developed a workflow over years, right? And they're pretty comfortable and happy with how they're doing their work, and then now suddenly they have to completely change it. So that's really difficult for them. And I think again, we need to design for the human in the loop, right? We know this customer-centric design is super important because we need to make sure that on the one hand it helps the business, but it also always needs to help the individual employee, at least in those existing companies. Of course, there's this whole other topic of disruption, right? Like even if companies do use AI, there could be another company that comes in and just does everything automated, and then you still have a problem. But I think it's not that easy to just replace all the workflows by AI in existing company.
But I actually often say this. I think one of the biggest sort of skills or abilities of the future is going to be just like people being open to change and being open to changing their workflows and their routines. Because I do agree, it's like a big limitation currently that people are very comfortable in their routines, and I think that's going to be very difficult in sort of a rapidly evolving future. But I'm also curious, like you say at some point you think some functions will probably be replaceable. What is your time frame? Like how do you see sort of the immediate like 5 years? Like where do you see things going in the short to midterm?
I think this really depends on the industry. I think it's already possible in a lot of cases now. And I think some smaller companies that have a lot of pressure, they will do this already now. Or companies that just start out, they are AI first. They are already built with this in mind. So that's also an advantage. But especially when we look at more traditional industries, I was talking yesterday to a guy who works in finance, and he said like we're not allowed to use AI in our business. We have some internal AI, but it doesn't work well, and they have all these compliance and regulatory hurdles. And so I think for these companies it might take decades to actually adopt this. Which begs the question, will they exist in a few decades? Because we know that it's quite easy to disrupt if you just have the better service, the better product.
That's actually quite interesting, like because some managers might feel like, okay, this is just another technology and we can adopt it when we want, but maybe it is actually so disruptive that it means sort of the life or death of that company, right? So yeah, that's interesting.
As a consultant in AI strategy, what are your personally, what are your challenges when trying to maybe translate complex AI capabilities to client, or just managing stakeholders who may still be a bit concerned about adopting this? Like just the human side.
In this process, which we call business development, BD, which is kind of a big part of our work, we have to create proposals. We have to talk to the client, define requirements and scope, and all of this work. It's a lot of work, but it's usually unpaid, right? It needs to be offset by the actual build projects. And so if we could automate some of these parts, I think it could actually help a lot to, on the one hand, reduce our cost and just reduce work that is maybe monotonous, that is just repeating. But at the same time, we also gain the ability to talk to more clients at the same time, and maybe ramp up our project pipeline and just have more opportunities.
For business leaders or people also in business transformation listening to this, what's one action you recommend they take tomorrow to better position their organization for the AI-driven future?
Okay, I think I actually have 2 points. Number one, I think we mentioned already. I think if you are a leader or an entrepreneur, really do some scenario planning. Think about like in a few years from now, when AI is even more powerful than it is now, and it actually changes the way industries work. What would that mean for your industry? Like what happens? And if you do that, I think this is a very valuable exercise, because then you can start thinking about, how do I adapt? How am I not disrupted? Like, how do I protect myself from being disrupted? And I think the second thing is just start using AI. So for example, right now AI can still hallucinate, it can still make mistakes, so you might not be able to apply it for very like business critical processes. But a company that we work with, for example, they started prototyping and started a proof of concept for applying AI for their visitor registration process. So it is not critical if there's a mistake, but it actually helps them reduce some work that they need to do additionally to their day job, which can be very distracting and annoying. Because at the moment they need to register the parking lot, they need to register catering, they need to register the building access, all individually. And if AI can help with that, to give you some instructions, to maybe even automate some of the data input, then that's a big help. And at the same time, it doesn't disrupt your business, your business critical operation. So trying AI in these kind of cases, I think, helps you to get familiar and gather data, maybe even, or experience, and then you can roll it out to more processes later. Yeah.
All right. This has been incredibly insightful, Felix. So maybe would you like to share with our listeners or our viewers where they could potentially find you, if they would like to connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, and maybe you can also link to my profile as well. And I'm typically in many different places. So if you want to catch up in person and grab a coffee, I'm usually somewhere in Asia, Singapore, or in Korea, and sometimes also in Europe. So just hit me up, and then I will see where I can talk to you.
Awesome.
Okay.
So Felix, thank you so much for joining us in this episode of HauseTalk. It was a pleasure, and I hope we can have you on again in the future.
Sure.
It's a very evolving field, so I'm sure we'll have plenty to discuss for years to come. So, and to everyone else, thank you so much for watching so far. Please like the video and also subscribe to our channel. And see you soon with a new episode of HauseTalk. Bye bye.